As soon as it was a song, I knew that I wanted it personally. I wanted it at the front of the record. It just it to this day it feels like it contains so much of the DNA of the band at that time. It was like it starts with that beat and then so the beat was like at the time I think it was probably influenced a lot by Timbaland, the producer. And then like the guitars kick in, which at the time were very like cutting edge, what you call like new metal now, type of sound. Had a real bounce to it, but underneath that, there was a drum and bass or jungle beat happening at the same time. So right away in the first 20 seconds, you're getting three major genre touch points jammed together. And to me, that stuff only works when you've curated the right pieces. And those three things, when they fit together, I was like, damn, like, I don't know if I've ever put the pieces together in a way that like, it just sounds so right. It sounds really like this is exactly what I want it to sound like. And then then the rapping and the lyrics and stuff, and the fact that Chester raps the chorus. It's actually both of us rapping together, but we put his vocal way up in the mix. And then it goes from that to at the end of the song, it's a really melodic thing at the end. So all of those things said, like, there's also like a vulnerability in it and a toughness to it. Like it really was a well-rounded like Linkin Park introduction to Linkin Park. Say the only thing about that song that I felt in retrospect, I was like, oh, that didn't age super well, is the video. You watch the video, it's like, I'm sorry, like I don't know what we were doing. I don't know what's going on. I remember Chester showing up with like all plaid, like a whole like plaid outfit on. And I was thinking, that's a very weird choice. But it was the type of thing where like you had to choose your battles, because we could at that point, like there was so much on the line. We were just breaking, and like there were minor disagreements on things all the time. So I wasn't about to get into a conversation with him about his outfit when it's like we're just trying to shoot a great video, and the special effects in it are goofy, and I get the point of it. It's not a terrible video. I think we made worse videos, but when I watch it now, I'm kind of like, what? I look like a fucking idiot. Like I don't know what's going on.
One Step Closer was the first song that our record label released to radio. So it was actually the first time we heard ourselves on the radio. We were driving, I think, on our first tour bus through Arizona, and we actually heard it on a station that Chester grew up listening to in Arizona. And then we got home like a week later, and I heard it on our local station, K Rock, and that was super wild. I remember when I was little, I would just listen to the radio in my room and call in and request songs, and to actually have a song on the radio was super surreal. I heard that song recently, and because we played it live so many times, I have like the live version in my head. And when I heard that recorded version recently, um, which I've listened to from time to time, but just like haven't really paid as much attention to, I just loved how it sounded. I think Andy Wallace's mix. I think about the song as being so heavy because it has so much power live. And what I love about the actual song, the recording on Hybrid Theory, is it's not just heavy. It's electronic. It's super melodic sounding. There's an alternative quality to the vocal performance. It's just a beautiful song, and that riff is certainly it's probably the riff that I love the most, that I've kind of just channeled. And while it's the intro of the song, it really serves the backbone of the whole song, that very syncopated riff. And one funny thing is, a lot of guitar players who've covered that song as like an homage or something, even like professional guitar players who are way more adroit than me, like really have trouble with the syncopation. Like guys that you just think like shred for whatever reason have a lot of trouble with the syncopation of that riff. Like it's not technically hard to play, but it's all feel. And certainly the crowd feels it every time we've played it around the world.
So the origin of that song, we worked with these guys by the name of the Dust Brothers. We wanted them to produce a song. They ended up just giving us what was, I guess, parts of a song. They had a remix that that they never put out. So it just ended up just being samples. So we took those samples and started building a track on it. And yeah, like there was like some little drum breaks in there that became the rhythm, the rhythm track. And I think it started off as like a hip hop approach, you know, so I think it was obvious to put scratching on there and use those moments of scratching as almost like breaks in the song. Yeah, but I remember it being something that we were super excited about doing, especially, I guess it was like a very early, maybe one of the first collaborations that we did, because, you know, getting parts from someone else. And yeah, I think I remember being really excited about that song when we were done with it. Yeah, I feel like that song came together fairly quickly. You know, I think like the chorus was written, the music, and then the words, the lyrics, the melodies just came together pretty naturally. So that really established the climactic moment in the song to strive for, which really gave the setup an intention, meaning the verse and the rapping. I think I did the remix on that on Reanimation, and that was fun. And with the remix, I remember I had AC Alone rap, who is you know, one of my favorite rappers, especially at that time. Very influential in hip hop and probably one of the unsung heroes. You know, a guy that not everyone knows about because lack of commercial singles on the radio and whatnot. But he was part of this group called the Freestyle Fellowship, which is probably one of the most emulated groups as far as rap style, and a lot of the what they did influenced some of the Southern fast style rapping and different rhythm flows and time signatures. So for me, it was pretty awesome to work with him, along with everyone else on that Reanimation record, because they're all people that we really looked up to, really wanted to collaborate with. They weren't, you know, people on that record weren't the flavor of the month type people, but really important artists that meant a lot to music at that time.
The thing about points of authority that stands out to me is you can obviously play the riff and it really does highlight the band. And at the same time, I think the ethos of that song is deconstructing live music. Like the guitar is chopped up. So you've basically taken live instruments, something organic, and we were really making use of the technology at the time, digital technology, which is stutters and chopping things up. So it's like taking organic ingredients, putting them in a digital blender, and points of authority is what comes out. Mike is the most adept in the group at actually using recording technology. Like I remember him when we were young, like would read manuals, like for old gear, like 80-page manuals, like just the most painful literature ever written. And that's one of his superpowers, is the ability to really, even when he has basic technology, he really learns how to use it. And he almost plays some of the recording technology like an instrument. And I think you can hear that on this song. One thing that's cool about that song is the bridge was different on our demo. Like a lot of the demos we had before we went into the studio to make Hybrid Theory were slightly different. And I think in totality, the changes made the album shine, made it what it is. And as we're re-releasing the record, we went and found all these old tapes. Like some of them are actually tapes. That's how far back it goes, into the 90s. And because we became a band really in about 96, and Hybrid Theory came out in 2001. So some of these songs were kind of in the ether for about 5 years until we actually got to record them. And there are parts on some of these demos that I think are just as cool or even cooler than the parts that we chose on the album. And I think Points of Authority actually has a totally different bridge. And I remember listening to it recently and thinking, like, there's some elements in this demo that I really, really still love.
So I always wrote my own raps, but when it came to all the singing parts, some songs I would write it, some songs he would write, and some songs we wrote together. This one, and we usually, but it was usually together. Like even if I wrote a thing, which was pretty often, when I gave it to him, we'd go over it because I always wanted him to like tweak words and make it his own so that when he sang it, his personality was in there. Now Crawling was the opposite, where he wrote a lot of those lyrics. He had written the line, "Fear is powerful," in the chorus. And our producer, Don, was like, "Oh, I really," we were like, "How do you like the new lyrics and how do you like the song so far?" And he's like, "It's good. I really like that line, 'Fear is how I fall.'" And we were both like, "Oh yeah, that line's," it was like, dude, he just heard it wrong. And he heard a really great line by accident. And so that was one of those things actually that later on down the line, we learned to always listen to a song and like, even if we were like doing a scat vocal that didn't have real words, you could listen to someone just singing, jibber jabber. I don't know. And they would, you could hear real words in it and sometimes find good gems. The other thing I'll say about Crawling is just like that performance. We won, I didn't know at the time, when we won a Grammy for Best Rock Performance for that song, I didn't know what Best Rock Performance meant when we won it. Cause I thought it was Best Rock Song was what the award was for, but the performance part is studio performance, and it's 100% because of the vocal. Like his vocal in that song, it was even hard for him to do some nights on tour, and it's impossible for anybody else to sing it that well. I've never heard anyone else sing it, even like, every other cover of it is a mere shadow of the Chester performance of the song.
Runaway has like almost like a punk rock riff at the beginning. That evolved from a song called Stick and Move. And when we started the band, we were called Zero, Xero. And then there was some other zero, so we called ourselves 0818, because at the time, bands just put, it's like what you do if you can't get your, like the Gmail address you Gmail account you want, you just put like a number. That's what bands were doing at that time. And then that didn't work, or I think then Chester joined the band and we changed the name. We actually changed the band's name to Hybrid Theory. And then someone told us we had to change it, which is ridiculous. And so we became Linkin Park, and the album became Hybrid Theory. And Runaway really kind of tells the tale of that journey. Like there's the original song was written by Mike and Mark, who's actually one of my best friends still since I was tiny growing up. And he wrote like a few of the earliest songs with Mike. And Stick and Move was one of them. It's a super good song. And I think there's a version of it that we're including in the Hybrid Theory box set. People use names to classify music because you have to. Like you have to say classical music. You have to use names to classify things. Otherwise, you'd have no place to start. So different classifications were put on the band really early on. The thing that was ironic about classifications is the whole idea of the band early on was to kind of defy classification and actually to take these different genres that were kind of siloed, whether it was our love of rap, love of heavy music, love of alternative music, electronic music. These kind of were more distinct classifications back then. Now we kind of take it for granted more and mash them together into something totally uniquely our own. So, yeah, we just called it hybrid theory.
So before Linkin Park, we were called Hybrid Theory. That's when Chester joined the band. But before that, we had a different singer for a band called Zero with an X. And those two songs came from that batch of songs, which made it to the record. And I remember that song was written originally with Zero. There were 3 songs that Mike had written with Mark, who was our previous singer, and they were incredible. There was a problem that occurred because when Brad had gotten hold of the tape, being best friends with Mark at the time, or growing up, and he played it for an executive at a music label, and the executive liked what he heard on that 3-song demo, and it's like, okay, I want to see the band play live. And then they were like, okay, well, we got to figure that out, because there was no band. It was 2 guys. And that's where the origin of the band started. And I forget, yeah, those 3 songs I don't think made it to Hybrid Theory. There was a goal in the type of song we were writing at the time. And a big part of that was to have songs to play live. And so those songs have very suspenseful energy going on, especially in the verses, with an outpouring of emotion in the choruses. They both have a similar intent as far as the energy that we wanted to convey. And part of that goal is, okay, get this personal inner idea that has conflict. And that was really easy to do especially because our age at the time, and that universal emotion of not fitting in, and all that kind of teen angst, as we should call it. The other intent was to have those songs explode at a certain point, and how that translates live into people just getting really charged up, and then like eventually leading to I guess more of a mosh pit type moment, and that I think we learned those were early lessons as far as that suspense and release that would relate to people, especially with the right lyrics, that people could personalize that type of energy. And I think, even though we don't hear those musics too often on the radio, it's always, those songs are always on some kind of workout playlist where people need to get charged up and have that energy somehow tapped into and released.
The 2 songs, for example, that have over 1 billion streams on YouTube are In the End and Numb. So by the numbers, In the End is like our biggest song. The part of that was, well, I actually, the funny thing is that the moment I played that demo for the other guys, they knew that song was special. Chester always said that he didn't get it, like he didn't love that song. But I think he was kind of like, in saying that, I think he forgot that there were moments when he did really understand it. Like he did he always said, like, I never got it. The guy should never let me pick singles because I never understood that song. He's like, I like it, but I never thought it would be as big as it was. And he always said, like, the rest of us knew, like, always felt like that's a huge song. But there were times when we were completely aligned, like, there's something special about this song and we got to get it right. And the main thing that changed a lot over the course of writing it was were the lyrics and the verse. The rest of it stayed very, similar to the demo. If our drummer Rob was here, he would tell you the story he always tells about the song is that I had locked myself in our really shady rehearsal space on Hollywood and Vine. And Hollywood and Vine at that time was like drug dealers and prostitutes. Now it's like fancy restaurants, so it's really weird. But at the time, it was really, it was not a place you would want to walk around at night. And so when I wanted to stay overnight and write there because it was where we rehearsed. So all of our gear was there. And I wanted to write with all that stuff, like within arm's reach. I couldn't do that I was living in an apartment with roommates. So I wanted this like to be like insulated. And so I'd stay there overnight and there's no windows or anything. And so I was in this weird daze of like, I don't even know how many hours I was there. And eventually the guys showed up and they were like, how did it go? And I played them in the end. And Rob said, this is so weird. Like I was thinking last night when knowing that you were in here writing, I was thinking that we needed a melodic song that was like more timeless and more universal, that would like be almost like bigger in the sense of like the songwriting style than anything we had done so far. And he's like, you did it. Like, this is the song. I don't think we knew it would be this big, but we knew it was, at the time, it was the most accessible thing that we had done.
So that's one of my favorite songs to play on guitar. It's got a super cool intro. That song was originally called Esaul. And I think the demo is also recorded on our Forgotten Tapes as part of the Hybrid Theory box set. Esaul was our original vocalist. Mark was his roommate. So we just called this song named it after him, like nonsensically. It's a really intense song. And it definitely evolved over time. And there are definitely moments on the demo that are just speak for themselves. And there are moments on the Hybrid Theory version that are undeniable. And that's also a song that live has always been a fan favorite. Like, I remember what's super cool about that song live is when we would get to the really intense part of the bridge, we would just stop the music and Chester would be all the way out in the crowd, like crowd surfing, but like probably at that point, like standing on top, held on top of someone's shoulders. Or maybe on top of a security guy, I don't know, but really just had the crowd in his command and kind of could take it wherever he want. And then when the intense scream happens in the bridge, it's just like all hell breaks loose. I remember in the studio with Don, there was a process of like, how do we take the demo and turn it into a more cohesive song? Because the demo lyrically was very abstract. So I think there was an ethos to make it cohesive lyrically, and at the same time retain the power and the energy of where the song came from originally.
That song, I think that was, so I mentioned that 3-song demo. And then after that, the band came together and started writing songs. So then that song was part of the new batch. And it was really an exploration on how we can use, I think at the time we had a 4-track sampler, or not sampler, 4-track tape machine. So you could only record four tracks at the same time. And if you had more than that, you had to bounce onto other tracks with it, all on a cassette. So there were definitely limitations, and also limitations of how many seconds of recorded time on a sampler. So you had to just record really important sounds to that. So I think what that did, if you compare that to visual arts, it's a limited palette. You have a limited amount of colors to deal with, which I think was great, because we took every piece that we added into the music and maximized it. So with that song in particular, we're in the pursuit of matching the hip hop side of what we were doing into this heavy buildup, and it succeeded in a way where I feel like the music that we write these days is it's smoother, like things kind of meld in, but a lot of the music from the early album were like segments that were just like perfectly fit together, like a puzzle, so to speak, that we're like, okay, this is like the beat, this is where it comes in, this is where it drops, and it's like the layering of it was like, okay, boom, 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 and it worked out perfectly with two vocalists, Chester and Mike, because it created a template for them to really play off of each other. It's like, okay, how does this cool rapping that's getting you worked up build up into this vocal, or how can there be an A tag worked into a B tag kind of moment? And that's something that was very successful with that song. And I think that the concept of that vocal collaboration, whether it be rap from one guy going to rap from another guy, or like melody to melody or rap to melody, every version of that worked so well that we were able to take those ideas and take them even further with the rest of the record that we made with Hybrid Theory. I remember we're writing the record had a certain intention in mind. Also having this mission of applying the music that we love, like the influences that we love, and incorporating that into what we do, that helped define what ultimately became our sound. And I feel like there was an imbalance. We're definitely as we were making the Hybrid Theory record, there was way more emphasis on the hard rock side. So it wasn't like 50-50, but whenever the hip hop or electronic side came in, it just made it like, whenever it comes in, it has to be impactful, So I remember Mike made that string section as part of just a general beat that he made, along with a ton of other beats, and us really liking the orchestral nature of it and the suspenseful nature of it. And so we put a beat to it, and then was like, okay, how do we integrate scratching and glitching and messing with the beats in a cool way? So we just built, basically starting from the strings, and then built the rest. And I think the way it played out on the record, it was just the perfect breakaway from everything else that you were hearing. There was, I think, track to track, there's a lot of diversity in the type of song, and it gives you a good journey, and then you get a nice break before the record finishes. And that's what it does in the context of the record. And it also shines the light onto the beat production side of what we do. Oh yeah, I mean, that was always our intention. It's like, okay, let's shake things up as much as possible. I think there's a lot of indie stuff that we're listening to. I remember Brad was really listening to, I don't know, there's a band called Far. It's like this emo band, and like Sunny Day Real Estate. I mean, he grew up on heavy metal, but he was really into some of that emo stuff at the time. And then like all the way to, everyone was listening to different things. And on my side, there was a lot of electronic music, particularly from Ninja Tune records. You know, I think if you hear Cure for the Itch, you could kind of get that vibe, that feeling from it. So we would definitely strive to emulate the feelings of what those bands did successfully, along with, you know, all the other ingredients from hip hop to metal to punk.
I don't know if I'm clear on what led to that song being the last on the record. When we were working on it, my intention, either my intention or my direction from other people, meaning probably Dawn and Brad, was crawling is really great and we don't have anything else like that. Maybe it would be good to have another song that's kind of in that vein, like melodic, no rapping, you know, power chords and but still like a lot of energy. And I was like, okay, because there's a big difference between that and I would have put like Points of Authority and Paper Cut and With You in a more similar, like there was a lot of rhythmic stuff going on there. It was those were like hip hop tracks gone rock. So to come at it from the other direction, say, let's write a Depeche Mode rock song or something, right? And that's where that came from. Like, I think actually Depeche Mode, now that I say that out loud, like, I think that was really one of my touch points was like, let's put Brad and I had this really like this love and appreciation for Depeche Mode. And so I wanted to start the song with some of those like keyboard hook kind of elements. And then we translated some of those to like guitar harmonics. And the only hip hop element to me in there is Chester threw in the line, why I played myself this way. And when he wrote that, I knew what he was doing. I knew he was trying to say it, use vernacular that was a little more like just a tiny bit hip hop in the words. But the truth was that he would never say those words in real life. And so I was always uncomfortable with that line. I was like, that's not you talking, but I know what you're doing. Like, I know that you're just trying to glue. It's smart, you know, in the sense that like he's trying to glue the hip hop component of the band into the lyrics. I just felt like it was a little disingenuous. But that's like neither here nor there. It's a very minor criticism of a song that otherwise like I think is a great song, and I've just, you know, everybody's participation in the band on it was really strong. We were just having fun, man. I mean, it was stressful, and we a lot of the time didn't know what we were doing at all. Like, we were just being asked to do things that bands who were blowing up would do, and we didn't know how to do any of those things. But the thing that got us through it all was just, you know, being ourselves and knowing that we made a record that we were really proud of, and meeting fans who we connected with through that music. So it was like everything was a first. What a spectacular moment in time, you know, like everything was the first. Like we went into the studio to record a record, first time recording a song in a proper studio, first time working with a producer and a lead engineer who knew what they were doing, who had albums that recorded albums that we had heard of. It was our first time having a record deal. It was our first time going on tour in the US. When we went to mix the record, it was the first time I'd ever been in New York. Like, 3/4 of my favorite rappers were from New York, and I had never even been there. I met Busta Rhymes in the studio while we were mixing. Like, I was like, this is fucking crazy. Like, we're in the same studio as this guy that I've been listening to for years, you know? Touring Europe with the Deftones for the first time we ever went there. So it was, that whole ride was insane. And shocking and a miracle that we managed to kind of like keep our heads on straight and still be like, you know, good friends and decent human beings at the end of it all.